Let's have an update on the business news now for you here on France 24. Yuka Roya is joining us here on set. Yuka, you're starting with Donald Trump defending his decision to pardon the Chinese phone giant ZTE, aren't you?
That's right. The US president's intervention in a sanctions violation case caught Washington by surprise and sparked criticism from both the Democrats and Republicans. Donald Trump defended his decision, saying that ZTE was a big buyer for US companies, and that his decision to save it from collapsing was part of a broader approach to ongoing trade talks with China and peacemaking. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer lashed out at the move, saying it could weaken the US hand in the negotiations. Take a listen.
I'm now very worried because here on China, the president seems to be backing off, and his policy seems to be designed for a goal that Americans are not very supportive of. His policy seems designed for a new goal: make China great again.
Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, meanwhile, said his ministry is exploring other ways to punish the Chinese electronics giant. He said penalising sanctions violations is a separate issue from trade talks. As China's top-level official is due to arrive in Washington, Ross said the gap between the two sides remains wide.
It does demonstrate China's dependence on U.S. technology. Given all of these factors, I hope that we can make a fair deal. But if it doesn't happen, a trade tit-for-tat will not be economically life-threatening to the United States. ZTE did do some inappropriate things. They've admitted to that. The question is, are there alternative remedies to the one that we had originally put forward?
Next is one of our headline news today. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif is due to arrive in Brussels later this Tuesday to draw up support from European leaders for the 2015 nuclear deal following Donald Trump's pullout. Washington has threatened to sanction foreign businesses that have operations in the United States if they continue to do business with Tehran. France's Finance Ministry, meanwhile, is organising a closed-door meeting today with CEOs of major companies to discuss the impact of the US withdrawal from the nuclear agreement. Now let's take a look at the financial markets now. And Asian markets pulled back as investors turned more cautious after soft Chinese economic data came out and as they waited for more news about upcoming trade talks between Beijing and Washington. As you can see, only the Shanghai Composite just above the flat line and all the rest below in negative territory. Now, protesters took to the streets in Buenos Aires to oppose President Mauricio Macri's plans to seek help from the International Monetary Fund. They said they didn't want to see a return to the economic crisis in the 1990s. Argentina's peso plummeted to a new historic low against the US dollar on Monday, despite the government's effort to shore up the currency. The central bank has already raised its benchmark interest rate to 40%. The IMF is holding an informal meeting on Argentina on Friday. Now here in France, Air France is set to reveal its interim management at a shareholders meeting this afternoon. The event comes a week and a half after CEO Jean-Marc Janaillac announced his resignation after staff rejected the company's pay offer in a referendum. Luc Schrago reports.
Could there be clear skies ahead for Air France? That's the hope for the beleaguered French carrier a week and a half after the resignation of Jean-Marc Janaillac. The CEO finally steps down on Tuesday to make way for an interim chair, widely tipped to be Anne-Marie Couderc, who joined the airline's board in 2016. She'll have her work cut out, particularly in not just trying to restructure the loss-making company, but in handling long-running strikes. Staff began a series of walkouts in February over a pay dispute, and have currently cost Air France some €400 million, around 4/5 of its profits over the last several years. Janaillac threw in the towel when staff rejected a 7% pay raise over 4 years. The question now is what Couderc will be able to come up with to satisfy them, against a backdrop of national transport sector industrial action, particularly with rail firm SNCF, itself keeping up rolling strikes against reform from President Emmanuel Macron.
Now, finally from me, sextoysrus.com. That's one of the dozens of domain names that Toys R Us is putting up for sale as it winds down its US business. Like many companies, the toy store has registered numerous domain names to guard against someone hijacking their brand for their own business. The long list includes Bistros R Us, Burgers R Us and Recipes R Us. The bankrupt chain is auctioning off its intellectual property next month, including its name and its famous Jeffrey the Giraffe mascot, to raise money to repay its creditors. I wonder who will actually buy the domain.
It's going to be you, isn't it? What was the first one again? I didn't catch it.
Sex Toys R Us, and there's also Adult Toys R Us as well.
I just wanted to hear you say it again.
Of course.
Thank you, okay. Yuka Raya with business on France 24. Thanks very much.